Hours ago, back at the bar, the man had behaved very gentlemanly and led her out of the bar. Eva recognized her own car even through her drunkenness. She frowned at him. Did he not understand what she had told him earlier? Maybe she needed to make it more clear to him so he would not misunderstand her meaning. Where's the devil? You said that you're going to bring me to meet with the devil. Are you telling me that this car of mine is the devil? She glared at him. But the gorgeous man chuckled softly in response, as if he found her reaction and her words amusing. Eva said, "How adorable. Are you trying to fool me here?" His smile faded as he looked at her with a serious but gentle expression. "It's just that, the devil has told me previously that he did not like talking to anyone who is still drunk." Eva said, "I told you I am not." She wobbled unsteadily and he stepped forward to catch and support her. The man gently asked, "What's your home address, or is there anyone I can call to pick you up?" His face no longer held the teasing expression, instead, there was a faint hint of concern for the lady who still looked as though she could faint at any moment. She repeated tonelessly after a few seconds of blanking out, "I don't want to go home, and there is no one that I could call," and her face suddenly fell and became utterly sad. She bit her lip to stop it from trembling. Then she turned those clear eyes at him. There was no sign of the pain or loneliness that he saw earlier in those unclouded orbs, but they now shone with a strong and stubborn determination again. She ordered him around happily as though he was her personal butler. "Don't think that you can go around wasting my time here as well," as she pushed him down into the driver's seat. Then she walked around and sluggishly lowered herself into the passenger's seat before propping her head tiredly against the headrest. She commanded him as her eyes were already closed to rest her burning eyes. "All right, now drive." But the man did not start the car immediately at her command. He simply looked quietly at her. Eva opened her eyes as she did not hear the car engine starting and turned to look at why they were still not moving. Eva said, "Why are you not starting the car? What are you still waiting for?" She narrowed her eyes suspiciously at him. "Could it be that you're waiting for a bribe?" She grabbed her purse, but after rummaging around, she found that she had no cash on hand. "Fine, what do you want?" she asked tiredly after sighing helplessly. At that moment, a couple bumped into the front of their car. Eva saw two people cuddling. The woman was kissing the man's neck and then she clearly saw that the woman bit him. She frowned at the sight, but when the man carried her inside the car, she blinked. After that, Eva saw the car accelerate out of the car park. She whipped her head towards the man who was seated in the driver's seat. He was just staring at her as if enjoying his time just looking at her. He arched one of his perfectly shaped brows in an unspoken question. Her expression became serious as she continued staring on silently. And then suddenly, as though she had made up her mind, she crawled towards him. His eyes widened seeing that she had climbed over the handbrake. "Since I have no money right now, I guess this should be enough," she said nonchalantly as she had settled herself onto his lap. Suddenly, she lowered her head and kissed his neck, copying the exact same thing the girl they saw earlier did. Eva blurted out the first thing that she thought. Eva murmured, "You smell so good." The man said, "You must stop now, pet, or else you'll regret." Eva suddenly bit down on his collarbone. The man bit his lower lip and released in very slow manner. Then, Eva suddenly threw up on his chest. The stink of the bile mixing with the alcohol in her stomach rose as a cloying odor. Frustrated, he grabbed her shoulders and attempted to push her away from him. But before he could open his mouth to speak, she suddenly passed out. He could only look at her, speechless for a moment while his hands were still holding onto her limp form. "Now you've done it, you little red angel," he murmured as he put her back to her seat. Then abruptly, he stepped out of the car. He immediately took his jacket off and signaled to one of the bulky guards at the bar's door. The guard quickly approached him, catching the suit and shirt he had taken off and thrown at the guard. In just a few moments, he was half naked and standing in the cool night breeze. Then he finally entered and sat in the driver's seat. Her head fell on his shoulder, causing him to look at her. After blinking at her speechlessly, he smiled wryly again. Then he reached out and grabbed her, arranging her to sit as comfortably as possible on his lap and resting her face into his sturdy, naked chest. He said, "All right, since you are so hell-bent on wanting to go, I'll bring you to hell now, pet. You really gave me no choice." He patted her head as he allowed her to continue leaning on him. And then, he finally started the car and stepped down hard on the accelerator as Eva's car screeched out of the car park. Returning to the present moment, Eva sighed and reflected on the events that had transpired. She berated herself internally for her actions, unable to fathom how she had allowed herself to behave so audaciously while under the influence of alcohol. As she redirected her attention towards the man before her, she noticed that he continued to wear a smile. Eva was acutely aware that she did not possess the qualities typically associated with alluring femininity. She was not gentle, sweet, or delicate. This realization only served to deepen her confusion as to why this man continued to impede her departure. His behavior seemed to be driven by an ulterior motive, prompting her to confront him with a mixture of annoyance and curiosity. "How much do you want?" she inquired, pausing to survey the opulent surroundings before her gaze returned to him. She pondered whether a man of such affluence truly required additional funds. However, if he was not the proprietor of this estate, then who was? As she scrutinized him from head to toe, she was struck by his commanding presence, reminiscent of the aristocrats she had encountered in the past. Despite her reservations, she could not help but wonder about his identity. "May I inquire as to your identity?" Eva finally queried, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Who am I?" he drawled in a deep voice. "Why don't you take a guess, my dear?" "I am afraid I do not have the time for such games," Eva replied, her brow furrowed. "That is a pity," he replied with a smile. Eva found it curious that he seemed unperturbed by her typically reserved demeanor. Most individuals, regardless of gender, were eager to conclude their conversations with her, save for those that were strictly business-related. Why, then, did this man appear to be prolonging their exchange? Eva found herself in a precarious situation. To make matters worse, the man lying next to her claimed to be the devil. Eva couldn't believe what she was hearing. She looked at him skeptically, trying to discern if he was joking or not. But his wicked smile and intense gaze made her feel uneasy. As they sat across from each other, Eva couldn't help but imagine him with horns and a tail. She shook her head to clear her mind, but the man's overflowing sexiness and grace made it hard for her to focus. She knew she had to be careful with him. He was definitely someone who was cursed by countless cuckolded boyfriends and husbands as well as being worshipped by hordes of women. Just as she was thinking to herself, she felt his fingertip lightly brush over the skin between her brows again, as if to smoothen the deep lines that were furrowing there. He told her that the line would become permanent if she kept frowning like that. Eva caught his wrist, frustrated with his games. She told him that she didn't have time for this and that she was not drunk anymore. The man finally gave in and became serious. He stretched his hand out to her and introduced himself properly. Eva took his hand with a businesslike face and manner. As if she had just met up with a business partner for the first time. Eva apologized for what she did to him and offered to pay him for the inconvenience she caused. Eva said to Gage that he don't look like someone who is in dire need of money. But money is all she has to pay for all the inconvenience she caused. Gage swirled the wine in his glass and told her that he should be the one deciding on what kind of compensation he wants. Eva got a little bit surprised by what Gage said, but after seeing the bite mark on his neck she asked him what is it that he want. He smirks, and with smile on his face says, "I won't ask much, pet, I just want you to stay with me, in this house until the bite mark and hickeys disappear." Eva was taken aback when he said that he wanted her to stay with him until the bite mark and hickey disappeared. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She was in shock and speechless. Would that not take quite a long time? Both the bite mark and hickey, if left to heal on their own, would take at least 7 to 10 days or all the way up to 2 weeks. And from the little that she had interacted with this man, he would definitely drag it for the whole 2 weeks. That means a whole 14 days. But slowly, the surprised look on her face eventually turned into suspicion. This man, he most definitely should be joking around with her. He was playing with me again, right? Eva thought, insisting to herself that there was no way this kind of man, who could live in such a luxurious mansion, was serious about what he just said. She turned her eyes to him and stared at him with a serious gaze now. Right, I'm sure that any time now, he is going to laugh the moment I fall for his joke. She told herself confidently as she focused her gaze on him, observing his facial expressions closely as she waited for his laugh to erupt, which would indicate that he was kidding the whole time. However, stare as she might, that laughter that she had expected did not come. He had just stood there, looking at her with the same unchanging calm expression. It was as though he was still, waiting for her response to his earlier proposition, and Eva finally creased her brows. What? Was he really serious about that condition? He was not joking. Wait a minute. Eva's eyes slowly stretched wide at the thought that came to her. There is no way, could it be that? Her eyes narrowed and her gaze at him suddenly turned to become more accusing. There was even a flash of contempt that could be seen in her eyes as she was almost certain that this man was definitely making her stay for that. The sharp gaze she was currently throwing at him made Gage lift a brow slightly in question. Then a slight frown appeared on his gorgeous face before he sighed as a thought crossed his mind. Running his fingers through his hair with a somewhat offended half-smile on his face, Gage broke the silence. If you think that I am asking you to stay that duration so you can serve me in bed, then I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you're wrong, pet. Eva scrutinized his face, and when she saw that he seemed to be serious about his proposition and that what she had thought of his so-called hidden agenda was not what it was, she could only blush in shame. But at the same time, she felt that she could finally relax a little. So you're saying that I'll just need to stay here, until my bite marks on you disappear? She echoed his earlier conditions, as if she was still unable to believe it. He nodded. Correct. 'Cause I'm in a dire need of a companion right now. Speechless again, Eva looked at him with a deadpan expression on her face. This man, is he a kid in need of a companion just because he is home alone? Could it be just that simple? My maid has run away, and I still need some time to look for a replacement maid, he added while nodding to himself. Eva could only stand there and look at him, talking to herself inwardly. Maid? So he was actually planning to make me his temporary maid? Is he even serious? She was screaming out in her mind. Any more questions, Miss Eva? Don't tell me that you aren't satisfied with my conditions. You're not going to tell me you would rather me bed you than have you stay with me and accompany me, are you? He trailed off when she glared harder at him. And he flashed that devilish smile of his again. Fine, she bit out curtly, and immediately, within the safe confines of her mind, she slapped her own forehead. God damn it, why do I feel like this sly devil is tricking me? But I do not really have a choice here, right? I have not seen anyone else inside this huge house aside from him. Could it be that he is really all alone and we can play it by ear? Eva talked to herself, and her internal monologue helped calm her down somewhat. As Eva let out a deep breath, the man's smile widened and he patted her head as though she were a puppy. Good girl, he said, his deep voice sounding amused. She muttered, stop doing that. I'm not a child. He pointed at the bite mark on his neck, his devilish smile not disappearing. He said, all right, so from this moment on, you're not allowed to leave this house until this thing here disappears. He turned around, and Eva could only stand there, watching him walk ever so gracefully towards the fireplace and plop himself down into a plush cushion there, crossing his legs comfortably. Eva bit her lips as she began debating with herself inwardly again. Come over here, pet, his sexy voice echoed and pulled Eva's thoughts back to the present. She returned her gaze to him and saw him there, waving his hand elegantly at her. Eva retorted quickly, trying to find a way to leave. Don't you think I should go home first? Gage tilted his head slightly. Why? Eva said. Well, I don't have any clothes with me. I'll get someone to buy you everything you need for the time that you are here, he said, picking up his phone and making a call. And as soon as the call was connected, he continued. I need clothes for a woman. Wait a moment, Eva was flabbergasted at how quick his response was. Gage lifted a brow at her as he moved the phone away from his ear. Our bargain is already finalized, pet. I said you can't leave this place until these marks disappear. You agreed earlier. No reneging on your words, pet. Now go, dear pet, and take a shower to freshen up. I'll bring your clothes over in a few moments. He waved her off and continued talking to the person on the other side of the phone again. Eva could only bite her bottom lip in frustration and turned around. Later, inside a bathroom, Eva took a shower. When she was done with her bath and finally stepped out of the bathroom, Eva looked at the clothes that were already neatly laid out on the bed. Speechless, Eva lifted the pink-colored pajamas and glanced at the skin-colored bra and panties. Eva got dressed and reached to the hall, where Gage was already standing in a gray shirt and black pants. Prepared to immediately speak as soon as she reached him, Eva had just halted and opened her mouth when her stomach decided to speak up first. She face-palmed, her ears reddened hotly with embarrassment. But she was shocked at the sight of him suddenly appearing right before her and squatting down. She saw him putting a pair of white slippers before her bare feet. Her lips gaped open, never expecting this action from him at all. He looked up, and said, "Wear these." Eva blinked and got dumbstruck by his action.